Okay, thanks so much, Eduard. So yes, I'll speak a little bit of what people consider to be wise choices and cross-cultural differences or similarities in that in 15 societies that we sampled in this part of this great GPP project. So what do we know about good decisions? Consider this following situation. Sophia and her boyfriend have recently graduated from the University of Toronto. Sophia's boyfriend, David, has accepted a job offer in Toronto. Sophia has been offered a job at a prestigious company in a different country. Sophia and David have been dating for 3 years and are very happy together. So Sophia knows if she accepts the offer, they will be living on opposite end of the world. And as the flight is very expensive, they will only be seeing each other once a year. So besides the question of what would Sophia choose, which is an important one, of course, there is also the question of how she will make her decision. One way to reach a decision is through an internal process. You probably heard that advice before. This approach is often advocated by various self-help books and folk psychology. But another way that it is often considered optimal by experts in decision-making is to outsource the decision, ask advice from others. But how likely are people to choose wisdom of crowds, both in a form of anonymous others and family or friends one can trust? And how likely are people to prioritize inner deliberation and their gut feeling over this crowdsourcing decision-making strategy? In this work, we examined what are the preferred decision-making processes for those dilemma-like decision problems. We're specifically interested whether preferences vary across different cultures, so the GPP is perfect for that. And if so, what are the cultural values that inform folk beliefs about decision-making? The original sample consisted of over 4,500 participants from 12 countries in 13 languages. You can see it here on the map. What we did is to present participants with 6 vignettes, all participants saw all vignettes. And it's important to mention that we only used 2 out of the 6 vignettes in the small scale societies or at sites where data collection was very difficult. Each vignette described the dilemma with no clear dominant solution, similar to the one that you saw about Sophia and her boyfriend, and 4 decision-making strategies, 2 relying on internal processes and 2 on external processes. So to make it a bit more clear, here's an example. So Carlos, a young man, asked Marcos, his neighbor, if he can help him prepare his field to be able to plant before the rainy season. Here's the dilemma. Marcos has already started working on his field a few weeks ago and knows that if he helps his neighbor, Carlos, he will not be able to finish all the remaining work on time, and his harvest will not be as abundant as expected. So when we design those scenarios, we ensure that they vary in the relevance of the social consideration, economic concern, or other interpersonal considerations. And the key point is this: none of these situations could have a clear-cut right versus wrong answer. For instance, Marcos here can think of his family and his moral duty to provide for them, or he can think of the interpersonal concern of being a good neighbor, or as the relationship story about Sophia and her boyfriend I shared before, the issue may be about love interest versus personal growth. So those are kind of dilemma situations. Then we presented the strategies, and they were worded to fit the vignette. So this is the strategies for the Marcos case. You can see that there are 2 internal strategies, a deliberative, reflective one, and an intuitive one, and 2 external strategies, taking advice from close others and approaching it using wisdom of crowds. So advice from complete strangers. After reading each vignette, participants chose one strategy that they considered to be the wisest, one strategy they would use themselves in this situation, one strategy that they thought that most people from their culture would choose. This reflects the descriptive norm in their culture. Finally, we asked to what extent choosing each strategy in this situation will make them feel good about themselves. This is to assess sort of affective utility from each strategy. After finishing the 6 vignettes, each with their own questions, all participants responded to the individualism and collectivism scale to assess individual level endorsements of these cultural values. We also assessed need for cognition and metacognitive engagement with the situated wise reasoning scale. Of course, finally, participants responded to the demographic items. So what did we find? We found a clear preference for internal strategies. Here you see them in pink and purple. And a clear disdain for wisdom of crowds. On average, only 9% prefer the crowdsourcing strategy to complete strangers, or wisdom of crowds. And overall, as this map plot clearly shows, across countries, there was a preference for the internal versus the external strategy. The internal, you can see them in red. The pattern for what is the wisest strategy was very similar. Participants also judged the internal and specifically the reflective strategy to be the wisest. Participants across cultures did not consider wisdom of crowds to be the wisest. However, the picture changes when we look at descriptive norm. People around the world did not think that others in their culture would prefer internal strategy with in the same frequency that they did for themselves. Only about half chose the internal as the strategies that others in their culture would use. We then ran a follow-up study in which we simplified the strategy prompts. What we did is to omit the part in the description of each strategy that may have caused participants to focus on what the strategy does not include. It means what they should ignore in this strategy. Rather than, and we were afraid that people might focus on that, what the strategy does not include, as opposed to what it does. It means relying on either your gut feeling, your reflection, friends' advice, or strangers' advice. And here we used 4 of the 6 original vignettes. All other questions and measures in the study remained the same as the previous one. Our original sample included over 1,500 participants from 6 countries in 6 languages. You can see them here. We replicated our findings from study 1. It means that in all samples, most participants chose the internal strategy as the ones they would use for themselves. And they also considered the internal strategies to be the wisest. Same as in study 1, internal strategies were selected less often as the descriptive norm, as the one that other people in your culture would use. Although there are striking similarities between cultures, there are also differences. And to better understand the reasons for preferring internal strategies on the level of the cultural group and on the individual level, we used a multi-level approach to address both levels. We looked at individual level estimates and on group means for additional measures to explain preference for internal versus external strategy. So let's look at the group level first. Societies that reported on average lower collectivism and more metacognitive engagement were more likely to choose the internal versus external strategies. This is for the group level. What happens with individuals? So what is the profile of a person that prefers internal strategies? In our sample, they are female, they're older, they endorse individualism rather than collectivism, and they have more reflective needs, so need for cognition. As for situation-specific predictors, those who thought that the descriptive norm in their culture was internal were more likely to choose the internal strategy. That's not very surprising, but it's also not the entire picture, because if you recall, people tended to choose the internal strategies more from themselves than to indicate that others will choose them. So there is a discrepancy here, and the seeing the internal strategies as the preferred norm does not explain the entire profile of those who choose the internal strategy. So we went and looked at the effective utility. If you recall, for each vignette, we asked people, how would each strategy make them feel? And what we find here, that those who expected to feel better from choosing an internal strategy and worse from choosing an external strategy tended to choose internal strategies more often. And these results were similar for the second study. I will not present it here. I think we're over time already. And I'll just sum up. So we observe universal preference for the internal decision strategies. Wisdom of crowds was disliked by all societies in our study. There was a universal, let's call it egocentric bias. People saw their internal preferences as wise, but we're not so sure others will choose that wise strategy. Societies on average endorsed more individualistic values, and engaged in more metacognition showed greater preference for internal decision-making strategies. Finally, individuals who chose the internal strategies were likely to endorse individualism, activism, be more reflective, and expect emotional utility from making their decisions internally. Well, before I finish, I want to acknowledge John Templeton Foundation support for this and other GPP projects, as well as the amazing international GPP team, of course, Eduard and Kelly, and especially Igor Grossman, who is there in the crowd, for his leadership on this project. And we'll be happy to answer questions. And if I have a hard time hearing you, Igor is there. So Igor, jump in case there are some difficulties with that. Thank you very much.